in 28 numbers, right? So Microsoft is pushing very hard. Azure, again, if it's that's your choice, definitely it's one of the other best, cloud provider. Amazon is 25. IBM has it. Salesforce. So these are all the other top cloud providers. You can go with the one that you basically are comfortable with. I'm not gonna just advocate any vendor here. Okay, you can see the growth in millions of dollars, right? And when it started in 2013 versus in last year 2019, so it's 35 billion. So it's a huge, it's going, I think, exponentially, right? So and it's going to further just go up. Of course, there are certain sectors which are always going to lag behind and may not even move. For example, some of those financial transactions, unless they're totally comfortable. When that's going to happen, it's really anybody's guess, right? But a lot of companies who have non-critical data, they're also migrating over to cloud for their non-critical applications, right? If those applications that doesn't require, that are basically very critical and they have to maintain it within data center, which have they keep it closer to the chest, then obviously they will not migrate those applications on the cloud for maybe compliance reason from the government, or maybe because of the data sensitivity. But a lot of folks are comfortable where they have their dedicated servers and infrastructures, machines, dedicated pipe coming into the cloud. Direct Connect, for example, we'll talk about that in a few of the slides later on, which allows you a direct connectivity between your data center, your on-premise, or maybe your physical data center that you have to the cloud provider, and then actually you can have that the chasm closed up where you can share the data, and then now your basically your data center is an extension of AWS, or it's vice versa, however you want to see it, and this allows you the keeping the best of the both worlds. You have your critical data sitting on your data center, which is your preferred choice, while you have the other application, which basically does some sort of processing or not, sitting on the cloud, and then you have those two environments talking to each other using data direct or direct connect. But again, that would cost money. Obviously, you have to consider that when you are making that decision. But you can see graphically there is a growth going towards the cloud. All right. So that is the basics of the clouds. Now I'm gonna just share with you what are the basic services that are available on the cloud, right? The basic services that are available, at least on the AWS side of it, are basically compute, storage, database, networking and content delivery, migration, developer tool, management tools, security, identity, and compliance and messaging, right? So if we talk about the compute, right? So what does the compute entails? So compute entails basically in EC2 instances, right? Launching your EC2 instances, and then accessing those EC2 instances via SSH for Linux. Now, here, let me stop for a second here. When you guys are actually connecting to the EC2 instance, I'm assuming that you guys know some shell scripting, right? So because when we will covering the EC2 in the next session, I will show you how to actually connect an EC2 instance using SSH, right? So some script language, not too deep, but at least, for example, using how to use the VI editor, how to actually create an SH file, how to launch an SH file. So those are the very basic. But if you don't know, that's fine. You can ask me during the session and I'll try to help you out. But those are the things that we will be covering during the next session, which will be on the EC2. Access via RDP for Windows. For example, if you want to have a remote desktop, process that needs to connect. So that is also covered under the compute. So if you want to actually run something on a Windows machine, which is sitting on the Amazon cloud service, then you need to actually have an RDP instance, right? So if you're a Mac user, for example, I just use RDP and then connect into the Windows machine onto the AWS. So these are the things which are covered in the compute. There would be some more aspects we'll be covering into the compute, for example, how to actually associate a role with an EC2 instance. So when EC2 instance is launched, automatically it assumes a role, and anybody who wants to connect to that EC2 instance, they have to go through those credentials of the role, and then if they have the permission, they can connect to that EC2 instance. So that will be also covered under the computes. So these are the compute services. The next one is a storage, right? So we will be covering how to create a bucket within a storage, right? So a storage could be, again, I talked about in the previous slide. Storage could be S3 buckets. It could be EBS, elastic, block storage. It could be EFS, elastic file storage. It could be ephemeral storage, which is basically attached to your EC2 instance, which is your virtual machine. So we'll be talking about that. When you're talking about the S3 buckets, a very typical thing you may probably have heard is the buckets, right? So how does the bucket actually gets created? How do you allow a user to connect to the bucket using the permission on the bucket? How do you upload a file on a bucket, right? So these are all part of the storage. So we're covering those and more. The databases will be probably another service which is provided by Amazon. We'll be covering how to launch an MySQL instance, an RDS instance. Actually, there are two ways of installing the MySQL. One is actually installing on MySQL yourself, right? Using a yum command, or you can actually install launch an RDS instance using RDS service, which is very simple and easy to do, right? Obviously, there is more cost involved in RDS versus the first one, which I'm saying launch MySQL by yourself. The advantage of using RDS is that all the backups are basically taken care of for you by Amazon, right? You don't really have to worry about the RDS instance, right? You don't have to worry about taking a backup on a frequent basis or running a cron job or whatnot. Everything is done. Images can be taken, and then you just have to restore in case. You can also have a read-only replica if you're launching an RDS, and then Amazon allows you to do that by simple clicks and configuration. So in case if your main production database goes down, you can easily and very quickly, very swiftly promote your backup instance from MySQL to be a master database. It takes few minutes before it gets promoted, but obviously it just clicks and then it gets promoted immediately. Versus the launching MySQL yourself using the yum install, then you have to actually go ahead and install it. You have to make sure that you take the backups by yourself, right? You maybe take an image of that MySQL database, create a cluster of databases yourself. So all that stuff needs to be done by yourself. So it depends which route you want to take. They both have advantages. Cost is a big advantage when you install yourself versus RDS.